So everyone, you're muted when you log in automatically. So if you want to take yourself off mute, just say hello. It's Steve from Cannabis Business Association.
Hi, Steve. My name is Lynn. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Lynn. How's it going? You're from Kronos, is that right?
Yes, I'm from Kronos. I work closely with Pete Meacham, who I believe you've met.
Excellent. Pete was a great guy. I had a great conversation with him.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm happy to be here. It's a pleasure to be around like-minded individuals.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate having you here. This is a very informal conversation today, so I hope no one's panicking. See who else we have here. All right, excuse my blind guy glasses for a second. So we've got Ari, we got Lynn, we've got oh, Stephen, is that you from Parrot Pot Shop?
It is me from the Parrot Pot Shop. So I'll introduce myself next. I'm Stephen from the Parrot Pot Shop.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good, going good.
I like how we were namesakes, but we spell them differently. So this is easy already.
Yeah, your parents screwed it up. Mine got it right.
Yeah, no, mine were hip. Mine didn't believe in old school English. They were new age assholes. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that, Stephen. See, we got people just piling in here. I appreciate you coming. I really do. It's nice to have new people all the time. See, we got Dawn. Dawn, is that you from Flint and Embers?
Good morning. Yes, it's Dawn from Flint and Embers.
Dawn. Hey, Dawn. So glad to have you. So glad to have you.
Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
How have you been?
Good. Busy.
That's the answer we like to hear, right?
Right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming, Dawn.
You bet.
Let's just see who else we got here. We got Candace from Cottage Country. That's you.
Hi, good morning. My internet is not great, so I'm gonna leave my video off. Can you hear me?
You can leaving the video off is a great idea, and if that's an indicator that we can hear you, just barely.
Can you hear me now?
Holy Jesus! Yes, you are louder than the Verizon guy. That was awesome.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad to have you too, Candace. Don't stress about the internet. You're rural. We get it. I know it's kind of crappy out there.
You're rural. We get it.
Yeah. Hey, man, it's Manitoba. I mean, I feel like that's enough of an explanation right there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, Candace. I really appreciate it, even with the bad internet. And it looks like we've got Jane. Jane, is that you from the Norwood?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Jane. Jane, so nice to have you. This is a nice amalgamation of different sectors, but all in the cannabis industry. I'm very much appreciating this. Thank you for coming, Jane. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we're going to give a couple more seconds here for people to trickle in, but I'm just going to get started anyway. Not a lot of really pressing matters I wanted to talk about, but there are a few quick things. Summer's coming up. I mean, clearly we're in summer. I mean, it's Canada Day tomorrow. But that means people are normally out on vacation. They're thinking about, where they're going to go fish or how I'm going to get a suntan and things like that. But I'm asking people this year, this summer specifically, to have a little bit of self-sacrifice and spend a little bit of this time over the summer contemplating the ideas that you think will best benefit your individual business and how you can rely on the network of this industry here in Manitoba, excuse me, to help benefit yourself as well as the industry as a whole. Now that might seem really vague and superficial, but what I'm trying to get at is we have a cannabis industry that's struggling quite a bit, from licensed producers to the retail sector to ancillary businesses like packaging and labeling. There's struggle across the board. We need to be focusing our efforts on creating change. And I mean that very wholeheartedly. Those of you who don't know, my background is very much an advocate for cannabis. My specialty, I would say, is throwing a protest or creating a politician to listen to us. Sometimes those go hand in hand. And to be frank, I think we are reaching that point where polite emails and, asking for Zoom meetings aren't getting the answers and the results that we're asking for. Provincially, we've had the government postpone cannabis consumption lounge consultations twice, even though it could benefit the industry here locally. We've had the federal government postpone the Health Canada review twice, which could benefit the industry as a whole nationally. And then we could go into the nuances of all the different arguments on excise tax, SFR, micro production limits, research and development for outside of pharmaceuticals. There's a lot that we could tackle. But what I'm asking is there a desire out there for people to become more active? And I mean that very physically. There is a time, I've always said that there's a time to sit around a boardroom, and there's a time to hold up a protest sign. And I think we might be reaching a point where society has no inclination of the struggles in the cannabis industry right now. And in order for them to get on board with the social movement issue that we were so lucky to have with legalizations lead up, we need to educate them again. And that's only going to come from public demonstrations of what our industry is suffering from. When the nurses want better wages or better living conditions, 500 of them show up at the legislative building with signs and uniform outfits and stuff. It's amazing. Every union industry association does these things when there's changes need to be done. And I think we're at that passive state where being passive is not good anymore. We need to be active and forceful. And whether or not that manifests in campaigns and petitions, protest physically, or some sort of other, social action, we need to be taking that step. And I'm going to stop rambling for a second now, but I just wanted to let you know that I've booked a protest at the Manitoba Legislative Building for the 28th of September, which is the first day back for the Manitoba Legislative Assembly. So all the politicians will be back in that building that day. There's a whole bunch of pomp and ceremony that goes along with the first day back. So that'll be a great opportunity for us to be physically seen, hopefully get the media's attention, which gets the public attention. And then we can hopefully have some of those politicians who are there maybe stand with us and take our side and start pushing for bills and legislation that will help us. So that's what I've done. I'm open to some input from everybody now. So just unmic, and whoever gets first, go ahead. We're all polite. Oh, this is a quiet group.
Hi, Steve. This is Lynn.
Oh, hi, Lynn.
I had, I guess, an opportunity to attend the recent Grass on the Hill conference last month, and it was, it was a very inspiring conference where we had, similar to this, except in a larger scale, where we had various stakeholders from industries, from the cannabis industries, from bud tenders to retailers to third-party companies that are in the industry, coming together and really talking about what those key issues are in our industry that we need to continue to fight for. You touched on a couple of them that I thought it might be beneficial to bring forward to the group. A couple of the big asks that the Grass on the Hill conference was asking a lot of the people in the industry to fight for, and when we do go to the legislative buildings to talk to our MPs, to hit on certain issues that are really hindering our industry. And a couple of them, just to name, really addressing the financial viability of LPs by fixing the excise tax issues,
Yep.
The massive markups and fees,
Mm-hmm.
Understanding how we're going to level the playing field with the illicit market.
Yeah.
And tied to that is really like, how do we increase THC limits on our products? Another thing they wanted us to really fight for was allowing license holders to be able to communicate with consumers
Yes.
in age-gated environments, of course, because right now the government isn't owning that responsibility. And as people in the industry who are knowledgeable, who understand sort of like how our products might be able to work, how it could have a positive effect on people, I think we have a responsibility to also be educating our consumers. So really thinking about like how do we get the government to allow us to open those lines of communication. Another thing we talked about was eliminating, the red tape, the unnecessary regulations that hinder us. So things like, child-proof packaging on non-psychoactive products, excessive, security measures within the retail space, things like that. And then the fifth thing was like patient access to medical cannabis. So how do we eliminate excise tax on those medical cannabis products? So just like a lot of things to think about. I think the protests that you scheduled, Steve, is a great way to visually gain attention from the media, from consumers, from the government. But then we also need some sort of strategy on how we want to position our messaging at the end of the day and make sure that everyone in our industry are aligned on those asks.
100%, 100%. So just, that's a great point you made there, Bylin. So for some background here, everybody, just so you're aware, Grass on the Hill was a conference that was held in late May in Ottawa by C3, which is the Cannabis Council of Canada, and several partners, government relations, talking about the cannabis table and other things like that we've talked about in the previous budget that the Liberal government just released. So there was a large discussion of some of these exact stakeholder issues that we're dealing with on a federal level and that we're trying to bring back to this local level, so where we can create action with local MPs, local MLAs, city officials, or whoever might be in the stakeholder industry that will listen to us. And going forward, like you're saying, with a projected voice and a message is precisely why we're here, is creating that dialogue. So that way when we continue to send out these emails, because I mean, I send government's emails every week on behalf of the association. Sometimes it gets stuff done, sometimes it doesn't. But constantly having an informed voice from the different demographics within this community when we're voicing these concerns to the government on behalf of some sort of written letter or, a policy position standpoint, we need to be able to have the voices heard from different sectors, because if we don't, we end up losing out on some of those voices. And if our specific industry isn't being vocalized from, let's say, sorry to single out here again, Candace, but from, let's say, the rural perspective, then we're definitely doing a disservice to our community by not including their voices. So I'm very willing to have everybody's voices heard. I love it, because that's how this thing gets done. And Lynn, you couldn't be more right with the fact that our messaging needs to be concise and across the board, not just for Manitoba, but every province needs to be yelling about these certain issues, excise tax, advertising, etc., to make sure that there is an industry. And I really mean this with no, sort of hyperbolicness behind it, but there is an industry left in 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm a little stuttering here. In the chat, I've shared a link to Solomon Israel's latest article from MJ Biz Daily regarding the postponement of the Health Canada review. So if you want, check out the MJ Biz Daily. I'm not sponsoring them. They just got great articles, because Solomon used to work for Winnipeg Free Press, and I've worked with him many times. But that's just a good indicator of some of the stuff that's going out there. I heard another article the other day that the headline was, what has cannabis legalization been a failure? Like those things, as soon as the general public, the people who don't have any sort of industry knowledge, see that stuff, it is hugely detrimental towards us gaining any ground, because then all of a sudden public starts to have skepticism and concern. And then the public support goes down and down and down to the point where it's just 10% of us who really know what's going on. Another 90 doesn't give a hoot, Not give a hoot, but So, I mean, I love the idea of us having policy points that we agree on. Does anybody else have any voices and concerns that they want to address that Lynn or I or the Cannabis Council of Canada hasn't touched on, if you're aware of their actions? But I mean, we all in Manitoba, I think, are really mad about SRF. Everybody just paid that, right? So that's one thing. I filed a freedom of information request regarding that from a bunch of different departments just this week. So hopefully we'll get some action on that. I can send you the link for you folks to do that from your own perspective. And the more FIPA requests the government gets, the scareder they get. So anyone? Just unmute yourself and chime in if you want, everybody. Consider this one big sharing circle, but we can't pass a joint. Well, at least I'm making jokes.
Question for you, Steve. Daniel.
Oh yeah, hey, it's Delta 9 Dan. I love how that pops up on the screen like that. How you doing, Daniel?
Man, over all platforms. Good. Good morning to everybody. I just wanted to ask, how are we starting small, focusing on smoking. I just did that too. I'm on holidays, everybody. Bear with me. But how are we doing on window coverage? Starting with one small topic, one target that we can easily achieve, show that we can gain success together, working towards that one target. And once we do that, I'm sure with the connections and almost using that as a practice run for other bigger issues, I think the window coverage is the one that's going to be the easiest for us to all tackle. I think they're pretty flexible on it already. They've kind of already stated, hey, if you push us on this, we'll likely do something. How are we doing on something like that?
I'm pretty sure, Daniel, you've rekindled a little bit of memory here from the last conversations we had with LGCA and MBLL regarding that. I'm almost positive that they left it open to retailers to have their own devices to this, and they're just going to sit back and make sure that nothing goes wrong. Because we touched on this during our Q&A session, and then through subsequent emails afterwards. But I mean this very nicely, Daniel, but it's up to a retailer like yourself at Delta 9 to be a leader in that and say, look, we're gonna remove these window coverings and we're gonna put up green netting or something that lets light in, but people can't see the weed, or whatever you've got to do, right, to make your employees safe and make the store look. We have City of Winnipeg support on this. Ross, Edie, and Debbie Sharma were both like, why do we have these window coverings that makes the stores look gross? They were coming from an aesthetic side, but I mean, not a public safety side from the employee standpoint. But I mean, Health Canada is not going to come in, right? And that's their job that they say that. The government here just locally makes sure that it's enforced, really. So as long as no kids can't see your product, I think it's open to interpretation. People just naturally went to opaque windows to be safe in the beginning, but I think it's clearly an open opportunity for there to be some movement, like you're saying, Daniel. Little steps, right? Baby steps. What's that? What about Bob movie? Does anybody remember that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks. Appreciate that. I'm not on the retail side, so I'm not too sure, but
you're right.
I have to have those up. I was just using it as an example of what, you want to do something as a group. You want to achieve something as a group. If you want to see that we're, someone that is capable, a force to be reckoned with, I guess you could say. We got to be able to all work on one thing and accomplish that one thing together, and then use what we've learned from that to move on to the bigger and better things like SRF.
Daniel, I think you make a really good point, and I think if we could cumulatively come up with some ideas as to how to get around the window covering issue, and then maybe present these ideas to the government and implement them, because I mean, the government, they've already mentioned that they're basically waiting for us to tell them what to do. So if we are leaders and say, hey, this is what we've come up with, we're implementing at these stores, tell us if you don't like it. And then it's up to them to come up with reasons why, this isn't good enough to, protect children, but it's not protecting our employees. There has to be a public safety balance there between the intentions of the law and then following through on it.
In Alberta, they were having issues with people coming in, and what they would do is they turn off the open sign and then lock the door and then rob the place. So that's one thing.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, exactly. So something like that, if we all kind of said, hey, here's an issue that we have, and we all started making the changes, like you said, if all we need to do is just start taking the coverings down. Well, if we did it together at the same time, it's going to be a lot easier to set the precedent and a wave across the board for the rest of the people.
I 100% agree. And it may not be as simple as just, taking them down and leaving it open, but coming up with something to replace it so that way everybody, kind of wins. I think that's the idea. Daniel, I always love talking to you because you always come up with good stuff. There's another one, boy. Man, bam, on the point. Sorry. Very casual. Like I said, this conversation, this is how we build community and relationships. I don't want to be, a soapbox guy, Professor Whirl. That's not my job. Anybody else? Someone we haven't heard from. Steven from Parrot Pod Shop. What are your thoughts on all this, my friend?
Hey there, I'm just absorbing everything, being one of the new kids on the block, so to say. It's interesting because our store has a different design model than everybody else's. The windows aren't an issue from our end of it. It actually would create problems if we brought them back in. But no, it's I'm just here to absorb because I don't know what I don't know, and I need to know what I need to know.
Steve, could you explain that difference that you've just touched on, and how is your store different?
We went with a cash money design style where there is an open lobby and our staff are behind a plexiglass vault area. It has its limitations, but it also has some benefits to it. And in our case, our front area, we've used what would have been the storefront for interior store signage and stuff. So I'm not saying it's the right way to go because there are some limitations with it. It's worked for us, and it's worked from our end of it from both the security, but as well as a interior space.
Interesting. Very interesting, Steve. I'm going to come take a tour of your store now. I have to see.
When before, because I'd love to be able to be there when you do.
Oh, we'll communicate, man. I'll send you an email. Yeah. We'll do that. That's amazing. I have to see this implemented. This is great. Anyone else have any input? I mean, I don't want to keep you long this morning, everybody. I just wanted to make a connection, kind of get the vibe of the community, and we can keep working throughout the summer if you have time. If not, let's go forward. But I want everybody to be as much in communication as possible, and be open to communications. I'm a very extroverted person, so I talk a lot.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Candace.
Okay. If, like you guys were saying, we want to come as a united front and tackle one issue, the window coverings already seems like it's getting to be towards a moot point because I don't think anybody really is regulating it. Maybe.
Okay.
What other things do we want to fight about? For me, one of the big ones would be consumption spaces, consumption lounges, what have you. Does anybody else seem to care about that?
Well, I definitely do.
Personally, yes. As a consumer, yes.
As a consumer.
Put that there.
As a consumer.
Yeah, that's something that would be important to us as well.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, my understanding is we don't have any plans for consumption lounges at the time. But, that could be another moot point where some are with it and some aren't. But maybe the visibility of the SRF. Like, Stephen, you're already penning letters for that visibility. We pen them with you.
Yes.
Sign them with you.
Yes, signed letters from members of the community is great. I mean, when doctors sign a letter, 500 of them saying some procedure needs to be covered by the government covers it. You know what I'm saying? So it's you got to work with what works, and sometimes that's legislative stuff. Sometimes that's good old fashioned, grassroots efforts, and you can amalgamate them too and get really good results. Sorry, Lynn, did you say something that it would be something you were interested in? Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah. It was very similar to what was discussed, but I would love to know more about SRF and the issues behind that pertaining to the group here.
Sure. I mean, I can send you some information about it, but basically it's the 6% tax that the government puts on for social responsibility fees. It's a lot of money that they collect every year. It really drains the amount of profits margins out of especially small stores. And it could be the difference between, you know, the industry surviving and the industry not. And then you top on federal excise tax for producers. And then you've got which penalizes you being more efficient, which, you know, because of the 1 grant anyway. But yeah, there's a lot of tax issues that people really seem to be focused on, both federally and provincially.
And do we know what the government of Manitoba plans on doing with this revenue? And whether they're providing transparency around that?
That's the whole issue, is that they're not providing any transparency. The only thing we've gotten from them is their annual report that gave us a collected amount. And the last numbers I think we have is from 2019. So when there were very few amount of stores and there's still no, I'm not going to name names, but I know for a fact that there's $5 million been collected in SRF just from the people I've talked to. That's not counting the, like, another half of the sector. So we're talking, you know, $10 million, you know, addition to the public purse. And we want to know where that money's going, because we would really appreciate it if, for social responsibility, there was initial, you know, billboards and public information campaigns where, like, you know, you had to tell kids about marijuana. Great. But now we'd like some of that money to start maybe going back to the communities if you're going to collect it, you know? So maybe allow, you know, it to pay for, you know, a new hockey rink in some town or something like that, rather than it just going to the government coffers and being misspent on, I don't know, highways or something. I don't know. But yeah, so that's a big one.
Because the consumption lounges or consumption spaces, what have you, don't affect everybody in the industry. The SRF affects from a retailer level, and the excise, like it affects everybody. So that might be a better thing to put our energy behind.
I think the SRF sounds like it could be really easy, low-hanging fruit for us to tackle, especially if we go the route of asking for a bit more transparency around that revenue, and seeing what they can come back to us with. Well,
Stephen has been up there, but about that pretty loudly and vocally.
Diplomatic. I like the way you said that, Candace.
No, it's kind of my special. To make them louder. Carry you to the top of the mountain if I have to, Stephen.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Well, also, Stephen is one person. Maybe if we get together and we all sort of make our voices heard on the same issues, it will be a bit louder.
Lynn, you could not say what I'm thinking better. That was, yes. The more loud Stevens there are, the better. But no, this is definitely good. This is a good conversation, folks. And we you know, the fact that we have agreements on some of these big issues shows that this community really isn't as divided as sometimes it seems. There are, you know, nuanced issues, big companies, small companies, you know, producers, retailers, but for the majority part, we all agree that we want this industry to do better. We want to be part of this industry doing better. And we want to be part of this industry existing in 3 or 4 years, you know, so that's the reality. And I don't like to joke about it, you know, haphazardly, but the reality is that we don't tackle the macro issues that are coming, the micros don't even matter. So
there will be no industry for them to take an SRF from in the future.
Yeah. And you know, something you talked about regarding SRF being low-hanging fruit, you're right. It's as soon as you make, especially in this province, we have a conservative government, so they're all about money and small business and taxes and stuff. So if we can make this about finances, it should be easy. But I think I'm gonna let you guys ever get a bit go here, because I think we're reaching our time limit for our meeting. I didn't subscribe to Zoom.
Well, appreciate you getting us together, Stephen. Let us know sort of how we can support.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you all being here. I will send a follow-up email just with, you know, kind of some of the stuff we just talked about. And hopefully maybe if we can get some input, even some templates, you know, like something simple, like, you know, here's a letter. It's got a couple of informations in it. If you want to retract some stuff and just sign your name to it, send it out. Like you said, the more voices, the better, right? I can facilitate this pretty easily. And I know that there are enough smart people on this call that we can make this happen. I mean, you're all dedicated, and I appreciate it. So thank you for coming, everybody.